So hi again, everybody. Sorry, the angle's a little weird for this. I'm going to make the glaze now. So for the glaze, you need a pint of strawberries or any other berries that you like. I'm using a mixture of strawberries and cherries, 1 cup of water, 1.5 tablespoons of cornstarch, and 1/2 cup of sugar. And then there's red food coloring is optional, and so is a little bit of liqueur of some kind is optional. So first of all, you're going to, I actually have a little bit more than a pint, and I've cut them up into pieces because I am going to be covering my large cheesecake as well as my smaller one. So what you're supposed to do is crush 1 cup of the berries, crush them with a fork. I'm actually using a potato masher. I find this a little bit easier. It's kind of hit and miss depending on what you have, but just really get in there and crush them up as best as you can. And then you're going to combine them with water and bring it to a boil. It takes a minute or so to get all these really crushed up well. Basically, you just want to get them macerated a little bit more than they would normally be so that they can boil down. So you don't want them completely mush because they will turn much softer when they're boiling, but here I've done a pretty good job. The cherries are harder to mash than the strawberries are. Obviously, they're a little bit more firm, but it is starting to be cherry season here, so that's my favorite time of year is cherry season. Now, of course, you can use blueberries, you can use blackberries, but strawberries is, you know, the kind of classic for strawberries. So here we've got them all crushed up, and you're going to reserve the remaining berries to put on top later. So I'm turning on my heat, and you're going to put them into the saucepan, otherwise known as a pot, and you are going to combine with the water. So it's 1 cup of water, which I've pre-measured here, and bring it to a boil. So it's going to take a minute or two. After that, after it comes to a boil, you're going to boil for 2 minutes, and then you're going to press it through a sieve. I'm just using like a metal strainer. This will take a minute or two. Oh, and I have something on my element. You can see the smoke. But it shouldn't take too long. I'm really excited that so many people participated earlier this evening in the cheesecake demo. I hope you enjoyed yourselves, and I really had a good time. I hope I didn't seem too nervous. It was my first time doing it, and I thought it was a lot of fun. So I'm really excited to see everybody's cheesecakes and see what they look like. And hopefully everybody's cheesecakes taste really good. I baked mine. I'm going to go grab that and show that to you. Give me 1 second. So this is what my cheesecake looks like. It's kind of hard to see in this light, but it did get a tiny bit brown around the edges, and there is a bit of a crack in there. Don't know if you can actually see that. There's the crack. It's not a great light here, but no worries. So this filling will seep down into it. It's not my most perfect cheesecake ever, but I'm happy with it. So that's cooling, and I just made a little bit of a mess with that. I was really glad I put a baking sheet underneath it because it did seep out a little bit from underneath the springform pan, and I would have had a big mess in my oven if I hadn't. So that was that. So this is actually pretty close to a boil. It should be done in another minute or so. And what's your favorite flavor of cheesecake? I absolutely love like a coffee chocolate cheesecake, but my husband does not like mocha or coffee, so I almost never make that kind. But if I ever go somewhere and order cheesecake, it's always going to be coffee for me, whereas my husband will always order cherry or strawberry for himself. I also really like an orange flavored or orange chocolate. Ooh, that would be really yummy. And maybe I'll have to make some of those. I've also had great success making this cheesecake in little minis, and I've flavored each one with a different topping, or done like 6 with caramel sauce, 6 with chocolate, and it's really nice to do that and give a little bit of variety. I've done that for a dinner that we had from my Hadassah chapter, and everybody devoured them. They were really yummy. So this recipe could also even be used for Passover. If you use some Passover cookies as the base, mixed with margarine or butter, and instead of flour, you could add cake meal. It might have a little bit more of a dense texture, but it would still be really good, and I'm sure everybody would enjoy it. So I'm just going to go grab my sieve. And this is my little strainer there. And the berries and water are almost at a boil. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to be putting that into a bowl. I'm going to use a bigger bowl. No, I'm not going to use a bigger bowl. I'm just going to use this bowl. But this is what you're going to be adding. You're going to be putting it into the bowl and then pressing it through the sieve, and then adding your sugar and adding your cornstarch. So almost boiled. I'll be back in 1 second. I've decided to use a little bit bigger container to put this in. So here I have a 8-cup measuring cup that I'm going to use as my bowl. So don't forget to post your pictures of your cheesecakes, because everybody wants to see them. Do that after the holiday and let everybody know how they were. I guess it's true what they say, watching a kettle boiling. It will never boil while you're watching it. Okay, so it's come to a boil now, and I'm setting my timer for 2 minutes because it has to boil for 2 minutes. And that's going to make it a little bit thicker and syrupy, and it'll make it much easier. It'll break down the fruit, and then you'll be able to push it through the sieve pretty easily. You can use the back of a spoon to push it through the sieve, or you can, sometimes what I like to do is just use a ladle. And when you put berries in, you just go like this. Be careful because it will be very, very hot, and you don't want to burn yourself from the hot liquid. Basically, you're making a syrup here, right? A berry syrup. And it's a beautiful, beautiful pink color. I don't know if you can see that. Pinkish red. And it smells incredible. Strawberries and cherries. I really smell the strawberries more because I used more strawberries. And you're going to want to watch this while it's boiling because I can already see it's foaming up. And it could boil over if you don't stir occasionally. And there's supposed to be a trick where you put a wooden spoon across the top and it won't boil over for pasta. I don't know if that'll work for this, but I'm going to just keep stirring it occasionally so it doesn't boil over. There's just under a minute left. I'm actually going to lift this from the heat for a moment so it won't boil over, and to see if I can show that to you. How beautiful and red, and it's foamy. But it'll be finished in a moment. What else do people like to make for Shavuot? Making blintzes. This cheesecake filling would make a really, really nice crepe filling too if you're still cooking the crepes. It's very similar to a blintz filling, so you can imagine it can't be bad, right? So I'm going to go ahead and turn off my heat because there's only 10 seconds left on my 2 minutes. So now, there we go, there's my timer. So here I'm going to press through the sieve. So there it goes. And I'm going to use my ladle to press through as much as I can. You're not going to get it all, but you're going to get a lot of it. Then you're supposed to mix the cornstarch and the sugar very well together and stir into the hot mixture. So 1 more second and we're almost done getting this through the sieve. It's not all going through. You're not going to get it all to go through. It's mostly just to get the bulk of the liquid, so you're going to have a hot liquid. And you're going to want to do this near the heat anyway because you do still have to put the mixture back on the element and bring it back to a boil. So I'm turning that back on. Okay, so you end up with a bit of a mush here, and you're just going to discard that. All right, so then what you do, I mean, a lot of that mush did come through, so you might still be able to get a little bit more through. I don't actually remember if my mom used to get all of it through. I don't think she did, but basically that's what gives it its body. So you're getting a lot of the mush going through. I don't know if you can see at the bottom of this, the pulp of the strawberries. The cherries didn't work so well here, but I didn't lose too many. There's about 2 or 3 pieces of cherries that didn't really get macerated, but a lot of this did. You're basically almost like making a jam here. And I'm turning bright red because it's very hot right here. All right, I think we're done. I don't want to spend too much time doing this. Pretty much got as much as I'm going to get. All right, so then what you do is you put the sugar and the cornstarch together. So we have our 1½ tablespoons of cornstarch and our ½ cup of sugar, and stir it into the hot mixture. So I'm actually putting the hot mixture back into the pot, doing it that way. I think this works for me. And bring it back. Quickly bring to a boil, stirring constantly. And so after it comes back to a boil, you're going to turn it down and the heat and boil for 1 minute. And then you're going to remove from the heat. And you can stir in some food coloring if you want, but this does not need it. It's a very beautiful bright color. You just want to make sure that cornstarch is really broken up, because right now I have some clumps and I don't want that, so I'm just going to push that against the side. And as it boils, those will also break up a little bit more. This stove is very hot. I'm feeling it. So I'm bringing it back to a boil. I'm actually going to whisk it a little to break up some of those clumps. And I can feel it's getting very thick now. I can feel how thick that is. And the whisk, if you're doing this, you got to be really careful because you don't want to splash yourself with the hot liquid. But I can feel it getting very, very thick. And it's almost at a boil again. Now, I forgot to get my liqueur, so I'm just going to ignore the fact I'm not going to have liqueur in this. All right, so now it's boiling. And now I'm turning down the heat and letting it boil for 1 minute. And it's getting so thick right now. This is like basically what you're going to find in the jars. Or the cans, I mean, of fruit filling or fruit pie filling. Basically, that's what you're making as a pie filling. Now, the recipe says to pour this over the cooled cake when this is cool. If I remember correctly, my mother always added the berries back into this so that you have clumps of berries in the syrup. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to let this cool for a couple of minutes. I'm going to add the berries back in, or maybe I'm just going to add the berries back in when this finishes. And our minute's almost up. It's very thick and syrupy now. It's very much like a pie filling you would buy. And it smells incredible. It would smell even more incredible with some extract in it or some liqueur. So there, it's done now, and I'm taking it off the heat. Remove from heat, and stir in the food coloring if you want, but I'm not going to. Like I said, I don't really think it needs it. Now, unfortunately, I don't think I didn't break up the cornstarch quite enough, so there's a few clumps of cornstarch in this. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this through the sieve again so that I don't have clumps of cornstarch in it. But I'm going to let it cool for a few minutes, otherwise I'm going to burn myself. And that was my mistake. I should have sifted the sugar and the cornstarch together. So there's a tip. Sift the cornstarch and the sugar together. Anyway, this is now quite beautiful. And I think I got most of the clumps. Cornstarch is one of those tricky things. If you've ever made gravy, you'll know that cornstarch can get all clumpy and you have to, or flour when you're making gravy. All right, so that's off the heat, and I'm just going to dump these beautiful berries back in. See the color of that syrup now? How stunning that is. Very hard to see it in the camera, but there we go. And I'm going to go ahead and add those berries in and stir that around again. And that's going to be such a beautiful topping. So I'm going to stop the video, and I'm going to add my liqueur, and I'm going to let this cool for a few more minutes, and then I will pour it over my cake, and I will show you what it looks like when it's finished. Thank you again for watching, and I hope you learned something. Thanks, bye.